Happy May and welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness podcast. How has Taurus season been treating you guys? It is honestly one of my favorite times of the year when we are settling into spring and all the plants are establishing themselves and we're feeling more renewed after the long winter and all those darker days and the sun's out all day. Oh, and I'm back from a little spring break. It was refreshing to take some time off of um, creating for a little while, at least in this capacity on here on the podcast. I enjoyed the beautiful weather, got a lot of gardening done, spent a lot of time hiking and foraging in the woods, reconnecting with all the plants that are coming back to life. I've been particularly loving horsetail, which I covered in a recent episode for you guys. And there's so many others, Canadian honewort, ground elder, nettles, patience stock. And the next plant I'm excited to more deeply explore is called cleavers, which is fantastic for kidney, like a kidney cleanse, and great for the lymph system, and just a beautiful plant. And I also recently made an incredible nutritive tonic using almost all the herbs that I've either collected or grown myself, which is my goal. I'm trying to grow my own medicine over here, so that's a lot of fun. And just today, my wine cap mushrooms came bursting through the mulch on a hill patch that I have, which was super exciting, which I planted those, not planted, but like spread out those spores last, I think it was in September, maybe October of last year. And they're bursting up right now like gangbusters, which is super exciting. So if you're nearby, stop by for some mushrooms this weekend. Now, last year I did an episode called Let's Talk About Nettles and Perimenopause. Right now, the nettles are very prolific in the woods where I hike, and this is the time of year to start collecting them if you're adventurous. They have amazing benefits that everyone really should learn about and use, and so I always want to encourage people to look into that. So be sure to check out that episode if you haven't yet. I also talked about perimenopause. I talked about it as a rite of passage. I provided a brief explanation of, what perimenopause really means. I covered a little bit about irregular cycles and histamine, and it's just a good primer. Spring just kind of represents nature's transition from dormancy to new growth. I think perimenopause kind of marks another type of transition. It's like a new phase into wisdom and power. And the nettles I discussed last year emerge first in spring, and they're like these resilient pioneers. They like break through no matter what, despite the challenges. Kind of like the woods was looking pretty rough there for a while, right before spring hit, but they are bursting forth. They are abundant and flourishing. And I think we women can be the same way, even during this transition of our lives. And so today I'm coming back. I wanted to revisit perimenopause from a little bit of a different lens. As a 50-year-old woman, I'm still cycling, and I have some of my own challenges here and there that I'm, trying to navigate. And they're just really the compounded effects of living on this planet and being exposed to so many environmental toxins for so long. A lot of us are finding in these years, 30s, 40s, 50s, our body is struggling to play catch up with the life that we've lived on the planet. And I think this is a big piece of what's going on for many women. And, it's going to be different for all of us as we each have our own compounding factors. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that, I've had to deal with, including, well, I'm not going to talk too much about genetic polymorphisms, but I didn't start supporting my own genetic polymorphisms until my late 30s, right? And then life just can also be really stressful with many challenges that people face. So I think it's important to keep chatting about this. And I want to paint a picture, not that we're all doomed to have this horrible experience or that we should fear the perimenopausal era of our lives. But it can be challenging, and I think it's important to talk about that. But even still, there are so many wonderful things we can do when we start to recognize and learn what all the compounding factors are and how they're all connected and impacting us in a myriad of ways and showing up in, 30s, 40s, 50s in women, in all these potential challenges, hormonal related energy, sleep, you know, pain, irregular cycles, so on and so forth. So, what is behind these confusing transition symptoms is really just a call to take much better care of ourselves than we have. And that modern infrastructure has actually allowed, right? It's just really a call to reclaim and rewild our wellness. And I just believe that it's a modern lifestyle issue, right? Many women feel like a lot of grief, a lot of frustration around this. And it's important to allow for those feelings and to process them. And I did discuss that in my last episode. Ultimately, it really is just an opportunity for transformation, and none of us are alone in this, right? It's very much a modern issue. So it's just a chance to evaluate where we are based on the lives we lived and make necessary changes. And what we're seeing collectively, it's not just aging, it's our bodies responding to unprecedented environmental stressors. Our grandmothers, they may have experienced menopause, but the extended symptom heavy perimenopause many women face today is something entirely different. So today I want to shine a light on something that's rarely discussed in conversations about women's hormonal health. Maybe it's discussed, but it seems to be not as mentioned lately, and that's the fluoride exposure. Not just fluoride, but fluoride is a biggie. One of my 7 pillars for the foundations of human health that I've covered in past episodes is water. I know, seems obvious, right? The problem is that the water we've been all drinking has a lot of hidden issues that we're now collectively facing. And so I try to teach my clients that everything you drink should be mineral rich. Part of the reason for this is that all natural fluids are mineral rich, but our tap water, our modern tap water, has had a lot of these minerals removed. And additionally, it often contains some degree of harmful substances depending on the location you're in. Often that can include chlorine and fluoride. And these are 2 halogens that disrupt our minerals as well as various metals. Now, I'm sorry to say, no amount of castor oil packs is going to remineralize the body enough to help you deal with something like fluoride, right? A lot of women have told me they do castor oil packs, and I get varied responses about, like, I don't think they're really helping me. Um, right. So we just have to remember that is a gentle, like, nice support, but it can't do everything that we need it to do in light of all these toxins that we've been exposed to. So they're very helpful. But if you've tried them and you're just not sure they're helping, that's because you likely have a significant body burden of other toxins that, you're just unaware of or you haven't fully addressed, right? Starting with a castor oil pack is great because it's very gentle and supportive. But, the addition of fluoride to our municipal water supply and dental products presents quite a myriad of problems and can harm the body in many ways. So, a particularly concerning connection I've researched is between fluoride exposure and ovarian cysts. Now, this hits home for me in a deeply personal way. And I want to share a little bit about my story to illustrate how these invisible environmental factors can manifest in very real, painful symptoms. So after I had my first son, Caleb, he's 26 now. He came into the world through an emergency C-section, following a complicated pregnancy where I was hospitalized for preterm labor. My body went through tremendous stress. While pregnant, he was in a foot-length breech position, and I was, 3 centimeters dilated at I don't know, maybe it was 32 weeks. It was 32 weeks, I think. And then they put me on bed rest and a medication, which I wasn't happy about, and quite frankly, I didn't fully comply with, um, to stop contractions. And this this led to a lot of problems in me. I had severe constipation. I went 8 days at least without a bowel movement. Which just created significant toxicity and congestion in my system. And there's just a whole lot to that whole story. It was a big ordeal. It was several months of, just frustrating challenges. So then he was born a little early and 36 and a half weeks. So we had some challenges because of that. And so the early months of motherhood brought additional challenges. So he had, he had an underdeveloped sucking reflex, which made breastfeeding difficult. He was pretty small and a little, well, they said underweight. I think he was under 6 pounds when I took him home from the hospital. But then he kind of lost some weight, and then he just needed to eat around the clock, for a couple months to catch up. And plus he had trouble breastfeeding. So it was just really a lot. And the physical and emotional stress was immense. Now, when my menstrual cycles eventually returned, which they did kind of early on, because I really couldn't successfully breastfeed well with him, something really alarming happened. I experienced pain so severe during ovulation, and I didn't know that's what it was at the time, that I initially thought my appendix had ruptured. It was that bad. I was doubled over, unable to function through the excruciating pain. And when I sought medical help, which was a very arduous, painful process as well, um, which the outcome was I was just casually told, oh, there's nothing here to see. And then the midwife was like, oh, you have Mittelschmerz. That's totally normal. Now, let me pause to explain what Mittelschmerz is. It's a German term meaning middle pain, and it refers to pelvic and lower abdominal pain that some women experience during ovulation. Mild discomfort might be common for some women, but what I was experiencing was far from normal. It was extremely uncomfortable and painful. Despite my concerns, no medical professional I could find, they just didn't seem concerned at all. And I had multiple ultrasounds that weren't particularly conclusive. And this left me to piece together my own understanding through researching my symptoms, tracking my cycles, listening to my body's signals, uh, making the connection to fluoride, making the connection to the minerals and such. But at the time, I just didn't know, I couldn't have known, was how the fluoride I'd been exposed to throughout my life, combined with undiagnosed mold exposure in my home, was creating the perfect storm for hormonal havoc. These environmental toxins are collectively just impacting my detoxification pathways, which I already have multiple genetic SNPs, right? Many of us do. And it just depleted my mineral reserves, which in turn affected my hormonal balance and ovarian function. So this excruciating ovulation pain came and went for nearly 20 years. It was on and off. Sometimes it was worse than others. Sometimes it was fine. But 20 years before I figured it out. So that was 2 decades of my life dealing with, potentially monthly pain or discomfort. And that I now understand was likely connected to ovarian cysts and inflammation triggered by, all kinds of things, right? But particularly the fluoride's effects on my endocrine system. Now, studies have shown that fluoride can concentrate in ovarian tissue, creating oxidative stress that damages normal follicular development. And this oxidative damage combined with disruption to the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis can lead to cyst formation and intensely painful ovulation. Okay, I'm happy to say I have overcome these issues, but I wish I'd learned sooner what I know now. How many unnecessary years of pain could have been avoided? Oh my goodness. And how many women right now are being told their symptoms are normal when they're actually signals of environmental toxicity affecting their reproductive system? So this experience taught me something crucial. When our bodies speak to us through pain and through symptoms, especially cyclical ones tied to our hormones, they are often signaling deeper imbalances that deserve serious investigation rather than dismissal. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania, just outside of the city of Philadelphia, that has always fluoridated the water. I've lived here the majority of my life. I talked about this in an episode called, oh gosh, it's is your pineal gland calcified and why fluoride f's things up. Make sure you look for that in the show notes because I cover fluoride much more in depth on that episode. But I grew up in this small town, boasting of their fluoridated water. Right. So my whole life drank fluoridated water. Right. So this is a big deal. Like if we have drank these things in our water for decades, including chlorine, including, whatever else, and including missing minerals, that is a massive, massive problem. So here's how fluoride worsens perimenopause symptoms. So during perimenopause, your body's already dealing with natural hormonal fluctuations. Adding fluoride prior to that era of your life, right? Or any halogen for that matter, right? Like we've got so many of them these days. Chlorine. I also grew up eating brominated flour, by the way, my whole childhood. So bromine is another halogen. And swam in chlorinated pools and bathed in chlorinated water, all that stuff, right? So those are a couple different halogens making a nice chemical cocktail in the body, right? So this can amplify common symptoms in several ways, such as hot flashes and night sweats. The pineal gland's role in temperature regulation can be compromised when it becomes calcified, which fluoride plays a big role in. And this can intensify these common symptoms. Irregular cycles. So fluoride's disruption of the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, the HPO axis, can further complicate the already variable cycle patterns of perimenopause, mood disturbances. The pineal melatonin pathway influences serotonin production. So disruption can exacerbate mood swings, anxiety, and depression. Sleep disturbances, beyond the obvious melatonin connection, fluoride's effect on calcium signaling in the brain can further impact sleep architecture. And then accelerated bone loss. That's part of the argument that was there for like putting fluoride into water because they used to say that it strengthens bones. But we're talking about a form of fluoride that is toxic to the human, right? That's being added to the water, not like the natural element of fluoride that we would get in such minute amounts. So we now know, or at least it's being made clear, that excessive fluoride in this form can actually create a more brittle bone structure, particularly concerning during perimenopause when our bone production becomes incredibly crucial. So let's talk about the impact of halogens on mineral balance and hormonal health in women. So we've got, like I mentioned, fluoride, chlorine, bromide, they can significantly disrupt the body's mineral balance during perimenopause. So it's important to kind of know a little bit about how these elements interact with our minerals, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, and copper, because it can actually illuminate a lot of the common challenges women face during this transitional phase, right? So calcium and magnesium are, two biggies, right? So calcium metabolism, fluoride can interfere with it because it competes with calcium for absorption, right? So this interference can lead to many things, but one of them being weakened bones, the increased risk of osteoporosis, especially important for women who are already at higher risk due to hormonal challenges during perimenopause. Um, Low tissue calcium levels can also exacerbate symptoms like muscle cramps and bone pain, as can high calcium without enough magnesium. Um, Magnesium is really huge in hormone balance. It's involved in so many enzyme reactions. And it can be imbalanced due to fluoride exposure. It can lead to deficiency and, you know, uh, this can increase our anxiety, our irritability, our sleep. Those are all common complaints during perimenopause. Um, and low magnesium levels can also hinder the body's ability to process calcium effectively, which compounds calcium related issues. In my fluoride episode, I talked about how fluoride depletes magnesium. So magnesium needs to be there to protect us from fluoride in the first place. So that's a whole, you know, catch 22 right there as well. Um, and then sodium, potassium, this is huge for fluid retention, for our blood pressure. We can have all kinds of imbalances with our sodium. We could have high sodium potentially. That could lead to poor detoxification. It could lead to fluid retention, elevated blood pressure, which isn't potentially another issue for women in this era. The opposite could also be true, and low blood pressure could be an issue, right? If the sodium is low. And then we have like weaker adrenal function, which, definitely creates a downstream situation with our sex hormones. Um, so then zinc and copper, can be affected as well. And these are huge for our hormone regulation. We need them in the right balance. We can have too much zinc. It can inhibit our copper, which can make, you know, PMS symptoms more challenging. There's a lot more to say about zinc and copper. That's like I've done episodes on that in the past. And I've done a whole episode on the luteal phase, for your cycle that I cover more. And then sulfur is important for detoxification and inflammation. A lot of people can have impacted sulfur metabolism, affecting their hormonal balance. That can lead to symptoms such as weight retention and mood swings. Fluoride can really harm our detox pathways, um, particularly phase 2. For sulfur to be properly processed from sulfite into sulfate, it takes a two-phase liver. It takes the two phases of the liver conjugation to do that, or detoxification in the liver. And a lot of times people can't do it properly. Like their phase 2 is really congested, um, partly because of all these environmental toxins and partly because of genetic mutations, right? And then the sulfur can accumulate and then cause even more inflammation and challenge in an already struggling system, and just contribute to the collection of symptoms in a perimenopausal situation, right? Symptomatic, at least. So halogens deplete or compete with essential minerals in the body, and that creates like a total cascade of imbalances, right? They bind to minerals, like fluoride and chlorine can bind to our minerals. That makes them less available for absorption. This can lead to deficiencies that impact our overall health. It can be way problematic during perimenopause. It can increase our toxicity. That accumulation of the halogens in the body can exacerbate the toxic burden. This complicates our detox pathways, creates a cycle where the body struggles to maintain mineral balance. It just results in a range of symptoms. So understanding the effects of halogens on mineral balance is crucial for women navigating perimenopause. By recognizing how these substances can disrupt our minerals, uh, then we can be more motivated to take proactive steps to support our health. Um, so addressing them is really going to help improve your hormonal health, your mood regulation. It's definitely going to be needed to have a comfortable transition through this important life era, right? And it's not just a short era, it can be quite a long one, right? So then fluoride can harm our sex hormones. So it can disrupt the estrogen, the progesterone, and what can happen is just we know it can affect the endocrine system. I already talked about it, how it affects the pineal gland, but it can also affect thyroid function, right? So fluoride has been linked to hypothyroidism, where there's low thyroid hormone levels, or they're just not able to get inside the cell. And then the thyroid gland produces hormones that play a crucial role in regulating our metabolism, right? And our overall hormonal balance. So when the function is impaired, this can lead to the decreased production of estrogen and progesterone, right? And this is particularly concerning during the perimenopause era, where, obviously that's where we need those things working right. So we don't have those symptoms that everyone's talking about. Some studies even suggest that fluoride can interfere with estrogen receptor activity. And that's totally correlated with iodine as well. And so what can happen is it can lead to altered cellular responses to the estrogen. This can end up resulting in an increased estrogenic activity in some tissues while reducing it in others. So this imbalance can contribute to conditions such as estrogen dominance, which is, going to be characterized by symptoms like irregular periods, weight gain, mood swings. And then progesterone is primarily produced by the ovaries during the menstrual cycle, particularly in the luteal phase. However, the adrenal glands also produce progesterone, especially in response to stress or when ovarian function declines, such as during the perimenopause era. And you might not know that that's happening because it hasn't caught up to you yet. But fluoride exposure could really affect our adrenal health and impact us, in the sense of how it plays a role in decreasing progesterone production. So this is why it's important to always support your adrenals first, really your whole HPA axis, quite frankly, but it's important to do that first before going straight to hormone replacement therapy, which, you can do it, but if you haven't fixed the whole system, there can be challenges with that. That could backfire. Um, Low progesterone levels can result in things like irregular cycles, anxiety, difficulty with sleep, and all of those things are also common for women who have perimenopausal challenges. So the disruption of estrogen and progesterone levels due to something like fluoride, and there's other things that can do this too. It's not just the fluoride. Can show up in menstrual regularities because of the effect on estrogen and progesterone. People can have irregular cycles, heavier periods, missed periods, changes in their cycle length, more PMS symptoms that are maybe more pronounced than they used to have, right? Like more mood swings, more anxiety, more irritability, physical discomfort. This is often linked to, that imbalance between estrogen and progesterone, where estrogen may dominate due to insufficient progesterone. Then we have the fluctuations in estrogen levels can lead to vasomotor symptoms, such as the hot flashes and the night sweats, which is often exacerbated by the overall hormonal imbalance caused by fluoride, the mineral disruption, the harm to the microbes, and the challenge to the detox pathways. So then a lot of times women are experiencing weight gain, metabolism issues, and we know that estrogen plays a significant role in regulating weight and metabolism. So any more extreme imbalance can lead to weight gain, especially around the abdomen. And of course, this can be more magnified by the thyroid dysfunction that could be there as well. And, if fluoride is linked to that as well as other toxins and things. Um, then we have mood and cognitive, right? So estrogen's involved in our mood regulation, our cognitive function. So when we have more extreme disruptions in our estrogen levels, this can result in increased anxiety, depression, cognitive fog. These are all more common complaints women share about during perimenopause. So the long-term implications of fluoride exposure or chlorine or any halogen and its effects on sex hormones can increase the risk of hormone-related conditions, right? So the chronic exposure of fluoride, like I have, that led to my ovarian stuff. There's also other risks of hormonal-related conditions such as uterine fibroids, endometriosis, even certain cancers that are sensitive to estrogen levels. It can impact our fertility, especially if you're in your reproductive years still during perimenopause, still wanting to have a baby, have a child. Fluoride exposure can negatively affect fertility by disrupting the delicate balance of reproductive hormones, right? So, of course, that can cause challenges in conception, maintaining a healthy pregnancy. And then, of course, there's like a broader spectrum of health issues, including metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular problems and just a reduced quality of life. So it really does pose a significant threat to our hormonal health. And, because of what it disrupts our thyroid, it affects the receptor activity, it affects our adrenal hormone production, it affects our estrogen and progesterone. It can just lead to such a cascade of hormonal imbalances that manifest as these symptoms that women are experiencing. So I bring it up because, number one, we have to reduce harm and exposure. And then we have to do the repair once we remove the element, right? So it's in a lot of people's water. So definitely find out if it has been in your water that you've drank the majority of your life, so you know about it. Get fluoride filters in your home if your municipality still adds fluoride. Ditch the fluoridated dental products, right? And that's not even as big of a deal as your water. But, the two combined is not a good thing at all. So definitely first up, get it out, get it out, get it out. Steer clear and have a plan for when you travel, like what are you going to do about your water, especially if you're staying anywhere long term. Now, there is an impact when we have genetic polymorphisms. I don't know why I can't say that word. Polymorphisms. There we go. On our detoxification and hormonal health. So when we have them, which we all do to varying degrees, this can significantly complicate the challenges that we face, particularly in our ability to detoxify effectively. So just depending on the specific combinations of SNPs that you have, these genetic variations can lead to an accumulation of harmful substances in the body if they are not properly supported. And this buildup can create challenges across multiple systems, including the mineral system, which is crucial for maintaining our hormonal balance. And then some SNPs can impact how effectively we actually are able to process and eliminate toxins like fluoride. So when we have those challenges to our detoxification pathways and they're more compromised because of the SNPs that are unsupported, it can lead to even more of a cascade, right? Can exacerbate these symptoms. Like for me, I had no idea. It was like the perfect storm of all these things that, made it really difficult for me to detoxify all these toxins I had been exposed to, which then, of course, I had that whole ordeal for 20 years. So obviously they affected me my whole life. I was fed poorly as a child, and so on and so forth. But I didn't learn about this until my late 30s. And we were still learning a lot about it back then, and it was just incredibly overwhelming. And I only took so many measures to support them. Thankfully that did help, but along the way I learned a lot more. So I think that this is becoming more known and understood, but this lack of awareness, has been common for all of us. So it can be really important for women to recognize how these pieces all fit together and, connect the dots between the genetic SNPs that we have and the environmental exposures that we have and how it's playing a role in our hormonal health. And this is something that I've been working to help my clients better understand. So we can kind of like see like the puzzle box, right, cover, to take all the jigsaw puzzle pieces and put them together correctly, right? Which sometimes, it can take a little while to put that puzzle together, right? But if you're steady and diligent, you can definitely do so, right? And I think, just even understanding like where in our life we've had these exposures can just really empower us to take more proactive steps in our wellness journey. And when we know any of our core data, such as a HTMA or our genetic SNPs, we can connect the dots and get to all the roots and, bring in much deeper support. So, it just becomes clear that understanding our genetic makeup, our interaction with environmental factors is really essential for navigating the complexities of longer chronic health issues or hormonal challenges that aren't necessarily fully resolving from the basic things we're being told we need to do. Right. So I believe that perimenopause, with the challenges and symptoms many women are experiencing, is a modern lifestyle issue. It's not a natural phenomenon. And let's just say it serves as a wake-up call for all of us, highlighting that the way we live is out of sync with our human biology. And that is me just saying, this is how it is. I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone. We're all in this together. So, grieve, process, talk about it, but let's make the changes to move through this phase with greater grace and flow. Right. So I'm sharing this, and imagine me linking my arms with you. This is like, here I am sharing. Hopefully this is supportive. It's just more information, education for you to tap into your own story and to see how these pieces are affecting you, right? Because let's be honest, this transition can occupy a significant chunk of a woman's life, right? 20 years potentially, right? So it's definitely worth taking the time to care for our bodies and reconsider how we structure our lives, how we support ourselves. And honestly, how we navigate this period is ultimately going to impact the next leg of our journey after we make this transition. So it's wise to evaluate and assess our individual experiences so we can transform them into opportunities for growth and restoration, so we can, head into that next phase in a better place. The majority of women I work with are in this phase of their life, right? This era, 30s, 40s, 50s. And they're facing various challenges like disrupted systems, mineral balances galore, detoxification issues, hormonal disruptions. Ladies, we are confronted with an unfortunate reality. So it really is a crucial time for us to learn how to take deep, deep care of ourselves and to be the change we wish to see in the world. So I think too, we have this opportunity to set an example for the next generation, especially as the toxic burden continues to increase compared to what our grandmothers faced. So coming to terms with these challenges often means, recognizing the deep restoration we need to undertake. And this is part of why I offer my Rewilded Wellness program, which provides support over 6 months. Together, you and I will lay a foundation in a step-by-step manner, covering all our bases as gently as possible. I really feel like navigating this journey alone can feel incredibly overwhelming. It can be confusing, um, leads to a lot of frustration where you may find yourself starting and stopping and maybe you go all in for a little while and then you feel triggered and then it's like this whole thing, right? Because it is a lot to navigate, and this is especially true given how our hormonal landscape can impact our mental, emotional, and psychological well-being. So in this program, I'm taking a comprehensive look at your health history and the challenges you're currently facing. And we'll explore multiple functional assessments with the HTMA and the biome at the core. If you're open to it, I can also incorporate insights from your astrology chart, do a little medical astrology weave in, and your genetic data so we can see what polymorphisms you have and cross-reference it to your HTMA and biome and make sure we are covering all those bases and making sure everything is supported properly. So this is like a holistic approach. It helps us identify like all the potential leaks that need attention. And it just complements the mineral balancing and restoration work. So it really can shed a lot of light on experiences you've had throughout your life that you may not have fully understood. And I find that many women dealing with chronic health issues just find themselves in such overwhelm navigating their own challenges that this depth of approach over 6 months creates incredible momentum. And it just establishes a solid foundation and teaches women how to understand all these moving pieces so they know how to support themselves moving forward. So if you're interested in that level of support, you can learn more on my website through the link in my bio. And then check it out. Feel free to book a discovery call if you're interested. And that way we can chat and see if this is the best option for you right now. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did find value in this discussion, please consider leaving me a review and sharing the podcast with a friend who might benefit. All right. So stay tuned for the next episode. We're going to continue to explore the journey of Rewilded Wellness together, and I will be back shortly.